this one seems interesting.
Yeah, you reminded me yesterday on your show when you were talking about flu being murdered or something like that, and you said, "Where'd the flu go?" And
Yes.
that's exactly what this little short film's about.
Yeah, someone was like, "What do you mean no bodies? Like, what do you mean no deaths?" And I'm like, "Well, the only death I can think of is flu because yeah, they played with the numbers. I mean, to me, this whole scam has been exposed so well. But what do you think? You think that this is going to stick around for 15 years, or you think that this
Oh,
is
I know. Well, the exercise is good till at least 8 years from the two. I got the one form where they got the World Health Organization has it world exercise until 2025, and then the what was it called? I can't remember the other one. Through the John Hopkins, they put out another one. It's supposed to be 20, pick up from 25 to 28. So I've got 8 years for sure.
right? See, I think so too. I see the mask and the vax and the PPE. I think it's all part of getting us used to being aliens, as in we're not designed for the environment that we're in, so we require protection, as in domes, PPE. The vaccination is part of this because it's part of, I think, the space age mentality, the new age. So, um,
I never thought of it that way. I just thought it as just divide and conquer. Just
certainly,
simple.
yeah, very much. It's a religious garment, is what I'm suggesting, and religious garments do that. They are there to protect you or block the world in some way. It's yeah, it's a religious garment in my view, and it's very divisive, as you've seen. My contention with the vax is all along has been this is very divisive because it's putting a line in the sand between people who are in favor of government mandates and people who prefer freedom. It's very basic.
There was a guy who already put out a video. I was watching today. I watched so many, so I don't know. But he did a Project Mockingbird on the unvaccinated through this news, and they must have mentioned it 200 times about the unvaccinated, the unvaccinated, unvaccinated. Same, just like on every channel was the same verbiage. So they're really hitting the unvaccinated hard right now.
Right. Well, when they first brought out HRC 6666, the Tracer Act, I said, hey, look, contact tracing is inquisition, and the unvaccinated are the sinners, the unrepentant, the unsaved. And what we're seeing is essentially an injectable communion wafer, and the mass media is the church. And so the people who reject that wafer are the ones who reject the mass media, the church. It's,
You reject Christ, right?
yeah,
What you call it? Did you on that form you said HR 666 whatever that is, right?
right.
The form you just talked about.
Yeah,
That's not the patent, is it?
no, that's a different 666, funnily enough. But no, the form, I'm talking about the Tracer Act that had the sixes in it, which,
You're right, from the house. Okay,
right.
I did check. I checked out the ones on the on the patent, right? And I went back and looked at them, and I typed it in, trying to find out what's going back. Every 2 years, that number is issued out, and so it goes 2015, same number, but it's only differentiated by the years. And it seems like every 2 years that same number is going on. They go through the same numbers, and I was looking at it. So you can take back 2 years from what was it, 19 that came out or 20, whichever one. You go back. I think it was the 19. So you go back to 17. They had the same number, but it was 2017 6666, and they had 2015 666. So it wasn't uncommon. I don't know what the other ones were. I didn't look, but people tripping out on that one. So I don't know how much on purpose it was.
Oh yeah, no doubt. People do trip, and people have been experiencing like Bill Gates phobia since Alex Jones made it cool like more than 10 years ago. I think a lot of these things are. I don't know why they do it. Like, do you have an answer for why AstraZeneca has an obvious 666 in the logo?
Well, I think that's just the corporations being part of the team. They're in love with numbers, whether we believe it or not. They like the numbers. There's definitely, I think, almost all major corporations have to have 666 somewhere in their labels, and that's why I think it's just one of their club numbers. That's the way I would look at it.
Right. Even like
Because
I'm on my Adrenochrome Chrome browser, Adrena graphics processor, and the Chrome is a triple six. CERN is triple six. World
yeah,
Economic Forum, and yeah, it's like it's everywhere.
like the space agencies are sevens. They all got their what group they're in. The seven vectors and stuff like that.
Right, right. Okay, so
And
uh,
so if it's through a space, it's always got sevens. And there's another one I can't remember. And I just think that's just their number. Okay, you're in this group. You're in this group. You're in this group.
it could be as
That's
simple as
how I.
that. Could very much be. I was kind of positing that maybe Mask of the Beast would be the appropriate interpretation of that somewhere somebody had screwed up one letter, typo, some monk, some scribe, and ever since then people were waiting for the mark of the beast when it was mask. Because the mask, to me, already did the job that the mark was supposed to have done, if you ask me.
But you got to remember this mask was done before. So people keep thinking the end of the world's tomorrow. They've been thinking that for 1,000 years. So that part. This isn't new. It's happened before. We know that, right?
Yeah, yeah, very good point. Very good point. The world
Yeah.
has
So
not
that
ended.
it. Huh?
No, that's a good point. I mean, the religious prophecies have all failed to come true. The global warmists and their prophecies have failed to come true. And the world was supposed to end last year from the pandemic. It didn't. Vaccines were supposed to kill everybody. They didn't. So many doomsday scenarios. How many asteroids, how many world killing asteroids have missed us?
Exit the dome, new lands to roam. Into your brain, the infinite plane. The edge is in your mind. 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 There is no cliff, fall you will not. Blackbird moves on to the new sun of dawn. Exit the dome, new lands to roam. Into your brain, the infinite plane. The edge is in your mind. 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 Edge is in your mind. The edge is in your mind. The edge is in your mind. The edge is in your
All right, that's Chief Crow. The Edge is in your mind. And you can find links to all of the music we play here at the website linked below. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Notifications are going out, so those of you who are subscribed to the text message alerts will be handed those here shortly. All right, let me go ahead and see who's in the chat. Red Dragon, Yurt Mama, P Trippa 103, David Diaz, Victoria Panda, Respis Finem. Thanks everyone for joining. Lily Bell. And phones are down. 833-311-1984 won't work. And the reason why, DDoS attack, they're under attack, the site that owns that. So there's a backup number on the screen. The number is, if you're listening, 909 966 5511. Again, 909 966 5511. And there's a few things we want to talk about. So let me go ahead and go through a couple of things that I put in the newsletter today. Today, October the 4th, 2021, this is the anniversary of Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, the first man-made object to be sent into orbit. So it's the 64th anniversary, meaning the space age turns 64. And I want to point this out because last year, Putin presented the world with the Sputnik vaccine, which was the first COVID vaccine. And he smugly declared Russia the winners of the vax race, which was like the race to get into inner space. They kind of made a comparison, an analogy here. But again, this is the anniversary of that date. And tomorrow, the Russians are sending their film crew into space. They're going to film a movie called The Challenge, or The Challenger. No, The Challenge, that's right. But anyway, I think it's kind of ominous, the title. And I was thinking about this. Why would you name something, a movie in space, something like this, a potential disaster, because it's a daredevil stunt, not just a movie. If they're actually up there, 17,000 miles per hour, a few hundred miles above the surface of the Earth, what could go wrong? With first-timers in space. So they call it the Challenger, Challenge. It made me think about the Challenger, though, and that's my point. Because if you look at how space has been represented as of late, it's been a bunch of out-of-touch billionaires. It's been a lot of really just egos on display, and even Saturday Night Live did a skit about it, about the race between Musk, Bezos, and Branson to go to space. And it was actually a funny skit, which is quite rare for them. They haven't been funny since probably before the ISS was launched 20 years ago. But my point is, they've made space into a joke. They really have. There are people who are derisive of it for other reasons. They just see it as malfeasance. The resources are going somewhere where they shouldn't be. And it was widely taken to be a really apt criticism of how space is being approached. And it got me thinking about how the space program was looking before the Challenger explosion. So if you remember the speech Ronald Reagan gave after the disaster, he pointed it out himself. He said, "This disaster should remind us all that maybe we're not taking it seriously enough. Maybe we forget the sacrifices that they make, that this is part of mankind's solemn quest to reach our destiny in the stars." And I started thinking, maybe we're going to have something similar at some point to bring us back to Earth on this whole thing. Because right now you have these rich individuals competing to see who can bring down wealth first. It just seems like it's got to end somewhere. And the name of this movie being The Challenge just kind of stood out to me. So just a heads up. And this is, again, tomorrow. They're taking off and it will be live, and I'll be more than likely covering it live. Should be interesting. Tom Cruise was trying to be the first to film a movie in space, and apparently they're beating him, unless he somehow manages to get up to the ISS first, some kind of rogue mission. I doubt it. But I thought it would have made sense, given that he was working directly with Stanley Kubrick, widely believed among those who don't believe the moon landing was real, believed to be one of the directors of that event. So it would be interesting that the guy who faked Apollo directs a movie, his final movie, with the guy who's going to film the first movie in space. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, though. They're giving this one to the Russians. Now, the topic tonight, Grimes, space communism. We're talking about Elon Musk's 3D printed baby's mama, Grimes. She recently split from him, and there was a photo of her reading a copy of Karl Marx's hilarious Communist Manifesto. And she's posing for the camera so you can actually see the cover. It's not on Kindle. She actually has a book. And this is right in line with what she's been talking about, how she believes that communism can be perfected through AI. So this photo made its rounds. They said, hey, look, the richest man in the world's girlfriend is reading the Communist Manifesto. And people were having a field day with it. Well, it turns out that she had her publicist arrange for a paparazzi to take that photo to troll the media, like Musk does. So I'm just pointing it out that it was actually staged, meant to be ironic, but it's actually not, because that's all stuff she actually believes. So I don't know if it's just for attention, narcissistic supply. She's bored with her animatronic toddler. Molly says, so happy I caught this one. Hope everyone's well. Yeah, thanks for joining for sure. This is going to be a nightly thing, Monday through Friday, possibly Saturdays as well. We've just had a few things in the background to fix, to upgrade. The phones are out of my control, but the number's on the screen. And yes, William Shatner's going to space a week from tomorrow, which, wow, I mean, he's 90, so it's not fake warp speed. He's going to be going Mach 8. All right, so let us continue to go through here. We're talking about animatronics, Musk's baby. Oh, yeah, Greta. Speaking of animatronics, Greta, a little update here. She gave her blah, blah, blah speech again, but this time she was outdoors, and everyone was masked but her, but they had a mask on the microphone, which I'm assuming was also vaxxed. And I could tell by the duper's delight in her face, I could tell that she enjoys her role as a child rebel standing up to the system, like Elsa from Disney's Frozen come to life. And they admit that Elsa's based on Greta. Maybe it's the other way around. Which comes first? So, the other day I was saying she outgrew her role. I said, this is ridiculous. She's out there saying blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if it has gravitas with the youth or something, but, I hear that. It sounds like Build Back Better, actually. Every time Darth Schwab, our dear leader over there at the WEF 666, every time he says Build Back Better, I hear blah, blah, blah. But she comes out and she starts accusing the people on her side, the ones who believe in this nonsense, of a whole lot of nothing. She gave the same exact speech. So at first I thought she outgrew her role as a teen rebel. But now that I think about it, why would she change? Why would she act her age? When has the political left ever acted its age? They're emotionally stunted in all of their argumentation. That's why they rely so heavily on psyops. So, I'm talking about fake hate crimes, aka Jussie Smollett. I mean, there's a list miles long. There's a really good book on the topic. You can find it on Amazon about how many hate crimes are actually hoaxes, but you never hear about that side of it. You hear about the hate crime, the media runs with it, they burn the witch, they stone the offender, whatever, and later you find out it was a hoax. But they already got their money. They already got their clout. They built up their hate cult, and nobody bothers to cover the debunking. But more than 66% of reported hate crimes are actually hoaxes. And I think this is also true for environmentalism. I think more than 66% of things that they claim are probably hoaxed. I mean, the ocean levels have not risen at all. And if they have, it's only been since 2020 when people started flushing their masks down like by the billions. So I'm just saying, she could play this role of a rebel teen into her 90s. And I mean role, and I say role advisedly, because we're talking about a character for the world stage. And you can find many examples of Greta like characters with Hitler, Mussolini, Mao. They all look the same. They have the same braid. They act the same. This is a character, and she's playing a role that pre-existed her. The other day, Joe Rogan posted, quote, "The world's a stage" on his Instagram. And this was in regards to lycanthrope in Chief Biden, how he was on that stage. Like it was an obvious stage, and they were doing the intravenous needle thing. And he called it fake. He said the booster was fake. So now you have one of the top podcaster who's been on the cancel list for like 9 months now. Now he's actually calling things out as fake. I didn't think he was allowed to. So he's either A, a loose cannon, or B, and this is what I think, it's a contrived takedown of the biggest podcaster so they can punish everybody. That's been my take on it from the beginning. When they were trying to cancel him for sexist jokes that he told or heard in the early 2000s. But the world's a stage. Coming from Joe Rogan just tells us that there are stages upon stages, and everyone assumes that the one that they're on is the real one, that they have reached the final level. Like, consider this. Buzz Aldrin claims that there is a monolith on Mars, or one of the moons of Mars. I don't know if you heard his statement. Think about this. Buzz Aldrin actually said there's a monolith on the moon of Mars. I think it's Phobos, the one that's shaped like a potato. So is that a lie? Or is it a conspiracy theory? Is it dangerous misinformation? And we know, and this is a fact, it is a fact that Buzz Aldrin's moon rocks are all made of wood. Wooden moon rocks, monoliths on Mars, but he's not a conspiracy theorist. A few other things I wanted to cover today. I watched Tenet, which is, it's a complicated movie, 10 net, and I think that's called that because you have to watch it 10 times for it to make sense. I got through it, and this is sort of a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler because it's such a confusing movie anyway. But basically, mankind, and this is so cliche, you already know how it starts. It's a sci-fi. Mankind destroys the world through climate change. Like, that's how every single sci-fi starts. Only in this one, man decides, okay, we got to go back in time and stop us from destroying the world. You know, just like the Terminator, where the robots come back to stop us. So that's kind of what happens. Anyway, it got me thinking about this picture of Greta Thunberg, where, and this is from the University of Washington archives, where she looks exactly like someone from this picture from 120 years ago. Like, we're talking a spitting image. And the more I look at it, the more I'm thinking this has got to be a deep fake. I mean, what do you think? Have you seen this picture? Or is she a time traveler, like from the movie Tenet? But instead of coming from the future, she's from the past, and at some point she's going to pick up a pickaxe, start smashing SUV windows and stuff. But anyway, it's not a bad movie, but at this point it's cliche because the enemy is somehow always man and the climate. Yurt Mama says, why did they bring her back? Clickbait. Let's see what we have here in the comments. And also this youth rebellion thing. You know, that's a big part of it. They got to use her up now before she's too old to play that. All right, let me see what we have here. Got Your Back Bear says, Joe Rogan's going to have to bend the knee again soon. Is it over, or is the snake eating itself? Yeah, I'll say this. Joe Rogan is probably taking a fall on purpose, in my opinion. And I think what he's doing is he's setting the bad example that they need to point at so they can say, we must lock down the internet, quarantine it, vax the web. And that's where they're headed. I really think that's the whole point of this thing anyway. The infodemic is more dangerous than the actual pandemic. They've made this case for some time. And the idea that a media personality, somebody who's popular, who is ungovernable, can just go out there and spout their opinions and influence people, well, that's too much. It's too much power. And Rogan, I think, might be doing this on purpose. And my basis for thinking that this is inorganic is, one, he's a shill. And two, last year, they pulled 42 tracks of his off of Spotify. And I have just seen this consistent pattern, and I'm not big into numerology, but the number 42 is always tied in to falling, people falling. Not necessarily always death, but a fall is a big part of it. Maybe end of something, death of a career, I guess death is often a part of it. So I kind of took, and this was announced at the same week that the volcano at, I think it was St. Vincent Island, was erupting on the 42nd anniversary of its previous eruption, which put the island into darkness. And that was a pretty interesting story in itself because they were saying, you can't get on the ships to escape the island unless you're vaxxed. So the people who had the foresight to take it in advance were saved. The people who neglected this, decided to wait to the last minute, maybe thinking they could let everyone else do it first, well, they were kind of stuck. And I thought, this has got to be an engineered psychological operation, like wag the dog style. Maybe fireworks. Maybe it wasn't actually erupting on the 42nd anniversary. And I say so because it's just too perfect of an illustration of how this thing is supposed to be conveyed to us, that you either get saved or you get the lake of fire. You get on the boat, you escape the island, or you burn in the lava. Not a difficult choice when they frame it like that. Someone here, Red Dragon's asking what channel. Hey, to make things easier for everybody into the future, infiniteplane.radio. And there's a couple of things you'll find there that you might like. Infiniteplane.radio has a number of 24/7 video players that won't be shut down. I've actually boycotted YouTube from my own site. So you have those videos. And then two, there's a podcast player there from Sounder FM that has closed captioning. You can actually take excerpts and sound bites and share them. But infiniteplane.radio. All right, let us continue. I want to go through a number of things I had highlighted at fakeworld.news. I've been very busily collecting leads and comments, and I get everyone's messages. So if I don't respond right away, I will. In fact, I had a track from Zekotic K9 out of Canada, and he has it's a band. I had one of their tracks. I was going to premiere it last week, so I will do it. Okay, I got a message from Twitter. What's the script with a volcano? If that's the volcano you're talking about, that's it. And when we say script, we've been talking about the world stage. Not in the flippant, almost superficial way that Joe Rogan means. I mean, the world's a stage at a very, at a very deep level of, like, we're literally on a movie set. And most of the things that are outside of our direct range of perception that are fakeable are probably faked. And I think we're mostly confronting theatrical situations that we've been prepped for with the entertainment. And there's a lot of symbolism, there's foreshadowing. Everything that you would see in the movies, we're seeing and experiencing in our, quote, real lives, at least the mediated version. So, I mean, and this is undeniable. 2020 proves it. 2020 was a really bad movie. And people took it to be real because it came out of the screen. But most of what we saw was a war game, a simulation. Empty hospitals, empty tents, decoys. That's what they were, decoys. Like the decoy tents of World War II. I'm sorry, decoy tanks. You had inflatable tanks to convince people, to convince populations that you have these large forces out there because it looks like it from afar. Well, they did the same thing with the hospitals, with these trucks outside. So you would think, oh, these trucks are full of bodies because they ran out of room in the morgues. The hospitals are so full of bodies that they don't have enough space. They got to turn the city parks into mass graves. I mean, they were really painting a dark picture, and it's fake. I wanted to point this out. This was just another bit of symbolism, some more props on the world stage at the moment. So the insurrection was spearheaded by QAnon shaman, 33-year-old Jake Angeli, actor, son of a Democrat judge, no less. Well, Jake Angeli was known for what? Running into the Capitol with a spear. And then in August, on the anniversary of the Charles Manson killings, you had a QAnon-inspired killer spearing his family to death because Q told him to. And I think this is a very interesting connection, the use of the spear with these two characters, because earlier in the year, we were examining the bigger picture, what I call the meta script, how it seemed that just as 2020 was templated in many ways with regards to civil rights and the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd, and the subsequent riots and all that contention, that in many ways, 2020 was templated off of 1968. And so on this channel, in our discussions, we had posited that 2021 would follow, and we may be looking at a continuation. And so we're looking, will 1969 rhyme with 2021? And it already has in many significant ways, most notably the space race. Bezos even launching on the anniversary of Apollo 11. So the space race thing was one part of it. There are several other, but one of the parts I wanted to mention, though, was the Manson event, because that was used to, of course, smear the anti-establishment hippies. Well, the anti-establishment hippies of today are the QAnons. And this is why they put a shaman in front of the group. He wasn't out there as a racist or a Nazi. They didn't send in a guy with a swastika, goose stepping over to the podium. No, it was just some goofball with a spear, a shaman, someone who took a lot of mushrooms and drugs and talked about it online. So what I'm thinking here is they wanted to create a composite. Charles Manson, by the way, was 33 when he became a cult leader. So you got this 33-year-old drugged out shaman with a spear at the Capitol. And now, on the anniversary, and again, 1969, Manson killings, on the anniversary of that, this summer, we had this guy in California, Santa Barbara, where Manson lived for a bit, a guy in California taking a cue from Q and killing his kids to, quote, save the world, which doesn't make sense, but it didn't make sense either that the Mansons were trying to also save the world through acts of violence. But my point is, I think that the media was consciously merging these two characters, an amalgamation to create a right-wing Charles Manson, and they have. And if you look at how the media describes the right and the QAnons and even yogi practitioners today, yeah, they're all a bunch of dirty, dangerous hippies, a bunch of Charles Mansons, dangerous people led by a cult leader. That's how they have been framed. By the way, did you know that the Manson... Oh, one more thing. The Manson killer from this last August, his name, Matthew Coleman, MC, a right-wing Charles Manson. So you have the inverted, MC, or reversed rather. CM, Charles Manson, MC, Matthew Coleman. And there's a lot of symbolism here. I mean, it goes very deep. But I just wanted to point out here the connection here that if you merge druggy, 33-year-old, shroom-taking QAnon shaman with his spear, and then the guy who killed his children with a spear, you actually have a perfect amalgamation. And this guy who killed his kids, Matthew Coleman, is all over People's Magazine, and you can't miss him when you go to the grocery store. Just look up at the shelves. Now, the Charles Manson killings, the whole Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter was also 1969, the song. And he believed that there was going to be a great reset type of event, some kind of cataclysm, but they needed to precipitate it. They needed to precipitate a race war. And that's what they meant. That's what they believed that Helter Skelter meant. And of course, Helter Skelter is, in Manson's view, it's like the Beatles communicating to him a secret message. And then you have the song after, Revolution Number 9, where you hear screeching pigs, sirens, a bunch of noise. But my point being, Charlie took it to mean that they needed to start a race war. So the way they did it is they committed a hate crime, or rather a violent atrocity, and they tried to have it blamed on the Black Panthers. So it was actually a racial psyop, a very gruesome one, kind of a do-it-yourself thing. I was like, man, Charles Manson should have just gone to work for CNN. They don't get all that messy when they run their race hoaxes. No, it didn't work. But my point is, it's an interesting example of history repeating itself or rhyming. And it is part of a bigger pattern. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and continue. Phones, if you want to know the phones, if you want to call in, 909-966-5511. The main number has been down for almost a month. It could, I'm not, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I might suggest that we're being suppressed. A couple of things here. The new Bond film that just came out is about DNA targeting nanobots that get injected into humans with a manufactured solution designed to wipe out the Earth's population. See, what do you make of this? What do you make of this? You go down to watch a movie, and it's pretty much just in your face, in plain sight. Just take in the programming, eyes wide shut. Let's see, let us continue. Red Dragon says he's more right wing than Hitler. Would right wing be the right way to describe him? Wasn't he a socialist, a collectivist? He hated individualism. Wasn't he anti-capitalist? I can't believe people are still venerating him after this many years. I'm actually kind of sold on the theory that he was another world stage character, quite possibly played by Walt Disney. Massive facility overseen by Pope Francis to pave the way for one world religion in 2022. Have you all seen this? Infinite Plane Radio, are you ready for the new one world religion?
No, I mean basically, I don't know what's going on. This is Respike Phoenix, so I mean, I'm getting banned on BitChute because of the videos that I'm making. So basically, I'm just making these like montages of Fauci, getting shot.
Wait, hold on. Wait, you said you're getting banned on BitChute, and
Yeah.
And why would you be getting banned on BitChute? And also, I have to ask. Before I go on, I'm gonna have to ask you a question though, because when you mention somebody by name and then you mention violence, you have to understand that makes some people think that you're glowing. Do you know what that is?
I don't know about glowing or anything like that, but it just makes me feel better to like put that out.
Okay, well, look, you want to make death threats against public figures, go ahead, but I'm not going to withhold any information. So should somebody say, I need the number of this person who said that. And it's not that I'm a snitch, but I've had a number of channels taken down in a very targeted way, and I have to wonder, are there motivations here? Like when people call in and they say things that are borderline racist, it's like, do you not know what this channel's about? Like you're in the wrong saloon. So move on. I think we all know. Like if you want to create content that gets you banned everywhere and then think that you can come over here and get a pass, you can try, but I'm not going to stupidly let somebody commit crimes. Maxwell Cooper says his accent sounds Fed. I think so too. We're joined by Crater Earth USA. Yeah, glowy alert. Now, I've never used the word glowy in a sentence before as my first encounter with one. So what is a glowy? This is from theatlantic.com. I read this last January. I kind of glossed over it, though. The far right's fear of glowies. In the aftermath of the January 6th riot, extremists have become obsessed with the federal agents who might lurk among them. And you have this awesome picture of these glowing feds, like these Secret Service agents, actually. Just it's Photoshop. Let's see here. During the Trump administration, many far-right groups were concerned that they would be split up by spies in their midst, glowies, federal law enforcement agents and infiltrators, informants who plot violence or try to prod people into illegal acts. Right, exactly. That's what he was doing. He was doing exactly that. So this was a glowy. The term is widespread in its use among extremists. Now, I'm an extremist for calling out a guy who is basically mad that he can't advocate terrorism on any of these social media platforms. I'm the moderate here. I'm calling for moderation. I'm a pacifist, and I'm saying I don't want extremists calling for assassinations on my channel, please. And no, I guess I'm an extremist because I'm worried about this glowy. But no, this is a fact. They exist, and there's all the proof you need. Now, if I go back, well, anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. Red Dragon says Terry Davis came up with it. Has anyone here been keeping up with QAnon, by the way? I was following QAnon on Twitter this weekend, on Sundays. On Sundays, they do something very fascinating. It's called Kennedy Sunday, because they do believe that JFK Jr. is going to come back and take control of things at the side of Donald Trump. and they actually sit there going goo goo gaga over photos of baby JFK Jr. It's strange. I don't know if it's erotomania. Maybe they're a bunch of glowies. But whatever it is, they're still awaiting quite literally the return of the Kennedys. It's going to happen according to many of them. I think I saw some estimates that say 20% of QAnoners actually believe this to be the case. All right, there's a case I've been following. This was a killing that happened in Washington, a 22-year-old. We'll get to that one shortly. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, this is Harmon Walker. How you doing?
Pretty good. Hey, do you agree that the last caller might have been a glowy?
I never heard that term before, so I don't know what that means. I mean, I heard you read the definition just now, but he was a weirdo. I mean, if he's got banned on everywhere else, why does he think he can say it now?
Right. Well, I guess glowy basically means agent provocateur, which, it's like you have a bunch of hippies and then one hippie has police boots on and he's the guy throwing the Molotov cocktail. That's the glowy.
Right, like that guy did one of those riots. He was, and in these last riots they had, I think it was this summer. I get lost. There's so many of them. And you had a few of the civilians following him around, but he was actually dressed up. But we figured he's a policeman. He was breaking windows and stuff, trying to cause the problems.
Oh, the guy with the black umbrella who was smashing up the AutoZone. Yes. Yes. Oh, that's a glowy. That's a glowy, 100%.
I wish the guys would have just jumped his ass, and held him down, and at least take a picture of him.
They should have taken his ID or something. I think so, but someone later outed him. His girlfriend did, and they said
did they? I did not know that.
It was her. I think it was her umbrella, and she was pissed about it, and she outed him. He was actually an officer, and they I mean, I think Snopes fact checked it, which pretty much means it's true.
Snopes. Yeah, I like those porn stars or whatever they are.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Snopes is no longer credible. They're right now in the middle of a huge scandal involving plagiarism. So nothing original about them.
Yeah. Anyway, I was going to say, you were talking about the Charles Manson and stuff. I just thought I'd call and say, I was a prison guard in California, retired from California, and I actually guarded him in 89, 90, and 91.
Okay, this is good. This is actually good to hear because there are some people who believe that he's just a character. He was never in jail. You can't grow a beard in jail. Is that true? Can you not grow a beard in jail?
No. There were times they had to shave. There's times they didn't have to. But where he was at, isolation, no, he could do what he wants.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
That was in Corcoran, California.
Right, I could imagine it'd be problematic. Yeah, give Charlie a razor so he can shave today. Like, yeah, it makes more sense. Let him do his own thing. But so this idea here, though, that Charles Manson was part of a psyop to smear the anti-establishment hippies. That's been my take on it. What do you think? You think that there's a bigger picture to this thing, or is it just some crazy drug addict with a bunch of...
He was in my building, and the thing is, it's hard to get him to talk to because you can't go up there unless you have two people. In the SHU unit, in the max security, you always have to have two people walking, two guards. And I worked graveyard, and you know how lazy us guards are. We couldn't get someone off their ass to walk up there with me. But I got to go up with him once, and I talked to him. And what was unique about him, most lifers, their cells are full of papers, books, and all that stuff. He was one of the most ones that had nothing. He had a bed and his sheet, and he had about 2 newspapers that were coming daily, and he would get rid of the ones as he had them. So that was it. And I asked him a couple of questions, and he had 2 things. He was worried about the rainforest, believe it or not, being cut down and hurting society. And then the other one, he says, Walk, he says that there will be a race war one day. It will be, they keep trying to place Blackie against Whitey. He didn't say derogatory words. He didn't use racial slurs or nothing. He was just saying what he thinks is going to happen because he thinks the man wants the divide and conquer with racial war.
That's interesting because, well, for one, Helter Skelter, he was convinced that he was meant to instigate it, and I was kind of joking that he should have worked for CNN, but they've been trying to do this for some time. So, he must know something on some level. Do you think he's legitimately crazy, as in schizoid? Or
wasn't crazy at all. When you see him on TV, when they do that stuff and they put him out, they have to poke him like a bear. Here's a guy who never touches nobody. You got to remember, he's isolation. He's a walk-alone status. He doesn't get to shake hands with another inmate. The only time he touches somebody is when we handcuff him and do him somewhere. So they somehow get him to get those interviews and do whatever. If you notice, they have to poke him to get him agitated. If he sat in there and was just quiet, then there'd be no TV.
Okay. Now, this thing about air, I remember coming across this a few years ago where he said he was worried that we're going to use up all the air, that there's a limited supply of atmosphere and that we're going to inhale it all and there's too many people. So he believed in the Georgia Guidestones philosophy. I think he was dating some goth that he was going to marry who also believed the same thing. And it was all about running out of air. And I'm like, well, Charles Manson is basically espousing what the environmentalists today are espousing.
Well, he didn't say nothing about that when I was around him. That was, you got to remember how many years ago that was. That was 89, 90, and 91. It's quite a few years ago.
Oh, sure. I mean, in 61, before the murders, he was before the Tate murders, he was in jail with Danny Trejo. And I heard Danny Trejo talking about this. He claims that Manson was able to hypnotize the other inmates and give them some kind of drug-like high. True or not, I don't know, but apparently, yeah, Danny Trejo spent time in jail with him.
Well, me being the guard, of course, he's always isolated when we were there, so he's never with anyone. So that part of his life is probably done, as far as I know.
Now, have you ever heard the voice comparisons between Charles Manson and George W. Bush?
I've heard people talk about that, but I'm telling you, I saw him in there for those days. I had one guy call me a straight-out liar. You know RT, I'm sure. You've heard of him. And I was talking to Jaron on Jaronism, and RT, I guess, was around there. I called in like this, and he basically says, I just don't believe you.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Now,
he just, because it's one of his main theories that he was a shill. You know, he was a character actor. And for me to guard him, it goes against what he believes.
oh, I see. Interesting. Well, there's so many facets to this because the theory is this. The theory is that the whole thing was some kind of a stage operation, a psyop, and that maybe it's just to be ironic or it's part of their psywar that they had George W. Bush play the role of this madman so that later he becomes this right-wing conservative. And so, you know, it's just kind of this switch of a persona from one swinging from one side to the other. And so it's kind of an interesting little thing to consider when you look at how all these sites that show you facial recognition and comparisons actually match Bush and Charles Manson pretty closely. But it's definitely debatable. I mean, it's not set in stone.
You know, Charles Manson, the one thing that really sticks out about him is how little he is. He's just a little shit. He's 5'3" maybe.
Yeah, that's what kills it because George W. Bush is actually kind of tall. I think he's 6 something, and yes, yeah. Manson's diminutive, so that kind of kills that. But their voices are a match, and I would say that I think they have the same kind of mentality, or at least.
They could, voices go with relatives. I've had nephews sound just like me. There's lots of people when you're related sound just like you, so there could be a relation, as far as we know.
Right. Fascinating stuff, though. And I always find it interesting, too, that this guy is like all about the air running out. If you read his stuff about it's basically environmentalist fear-mongering. But my point bringing him up today is that now the hippies are on the right. Now those who are against the establishment, unruly, the shamans, and even the yogis are looked at as conspiracy theorists because they go into alternative medicine, etc. And so I think what they've done with this recent case with Matthew Coleman is I think they wanted to recreate Charles Manson, but make it a right-wing thing. And so they wanted to shock the left coast, and they achieved this. And they wanted to make it look like, hey, look, you can be on the edge of the world, away from flyover country, on your beachfront home right there, surfing your days away, and one of these memes can get into your house, get into your husband's head, and he'll kill your whole family. And they sold that story. They repackaged Charles Manson for the modern era, and they made him a right-wing Charles Manson. And it's Matthew Coleman. And we're going to hear more from him soon. I think in November he has his next hearing.
Did he have any followers or anything? Did he have anything? Because the Charles Manson story was really built up to the time of the Helter Skelter.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. he is not the cult leader, but rather it connects. If you merge him with this kind of formless Q and the QAnon shaman, you get the composite, because he says that Q enlightened him and told him to save the world, you got to kill those with the reptilian DNA. So he actually claims that Q sent him, just like the Charles Manson case said, well, did Charles kill them? No, he sent the killers. So in this case, they're trying to suggest that whoever's behind Q, possibly Trump, is actually responsible for this guy spearing his kids to death.
Yeah, I don't see any connection, but you know if you look at the angle and you want to think it's okay, but I don't see the connection.
Well, the connection is this. The connection is this. It's basically anti-authoritarian types, the QAnoners, are looked at as problematic. They're looked at as the hippies of today, as how the media frames them. And so what they've done is they've created a deranged poster boy in Matthew Coleman and Jake and Jelly. And on the anniversary night of the Manson killings, they have an atrocity that's commensurate with the Manson killings that they can play off of to shock people about. We have to stop people from engaging with this because it's a dangerous cult and it makes people into these dangerous.
Okay, on that point, this is why I look at it. Okay, that's a reality created. Anything that's not natural, is a fabrication made by man. So it's always a reality. I call that reality. And then what I call real world is nature. Blade of grass, trees, clouds. Those are things man cannot create or fabricate. So man cannot fabricate nature. They can just imitate it and try to fabricate their own world. Okay? If you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, yes. There is a distinction, although they're trying to blur that, and they're getting better and better at blurring that distinction between the real and fake.
If you look at all the old first movies, and when they're all black and white and silent, and then it keeps going through, it's always the mad scientists who rule the world. And that's the same movie script they're playing out right now. The mad scientists are ruling the world. If you can see my point.
Well, I would call this a Scientocracy in many ways, where they've been given the ultimate authority. I call them a priesthood. I call the astronauts more or less an elevated priesthood because they've assumed that mantle of authority and people have given it to them. And it has many religious aspects to it. And then you look at the top of this thing and you got Darth Schwab with his Darth Vader uniform. Like literally, these people are like villains out of a movie.
Yeah, I agree. And what I was just saying is on these dates you're talking about where it correlated with Charles Manson's date and his date doing that. Well, they've also, as I was trying to give it nature, we know the moon does the months. But we also know that the powers to be have taken us off the lunar calendar and put us into the solar calendar where things are all mixed up against nature. So they can create the dates, which they've done, and that's why they can correlate and control the dates, so to speak, because they made up the dates that they use.
Oh, yes, yes, I agree with you 100%. And this is what I call the meta script. It's the imposition on reality, but they tie it in with the astrology, with the astronomy, with the celestial.
And that's what I'm saying. When they do that, that's not nature. You're mixed, because nature is the 13 months. That's nature. Man cannot change that. The moon will come around every 28 days new. No matter how many times they want to say there's only 12 months in a year, there's 13 new months in a year. In the story, they can't change nature. They can only try to imitate it. If you understand where I'm coming. So their numbers, like you said, they're the ones who made their numbers up. I mean, the 20th of August isn't the 20th of August. It's only in their fabricated world they've made up that we run under.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I follow a channel, Jurassic Liars 26, because he's very meticulous about dates, and he shows you how this date is actually off because it includes this change, and he shows you how there are different ways of analyzing this, and that what we're on right now is, we're on the world stage has its own time, and it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland. It's very distorted. And I think that's all intentional. And the only way that I can say that there is objective merit to our analysis here is that we can connect it to objective things in time. Like it is not a coincidence that Mercury is rising at 8:46 when the first of the Twin Towers is hit, and that this relates to the George Floyd event where he's kneeled on for 8:46 and the sun set in the Twin Cities. And so I'm saying
they're the ones that manipulate it. It's not nature. They manipulated it to work to their calendar.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what they've
yes,
done,
yes.
and I agree with you.
I used
But
to
it's
think
but the
I
guys
used to
want to
think
say is what
otherwise. I used to think, wow,
huh?
I used to think these are some crazy coincidences that this is some evidence of, I don't know, divine or diabolical intervention here. But no, the more I look at it, the more it's like, okay, well, it's pretty obvious what we're looking at here are psyops that are timed very precisely, and for some reason, there's this obsession with what we would call the zodiac.
Yeah, there's. I mean, and if there is in nature 13 months, right? So, and from my understanding, on I don't know if you heard this or not, the word month came from moon. There was moon at first from the ancient word. This one guy did a word analogy thing, and he said that's where the month come from was from moon. I don't know if you've heard that or not, but anyway, so I've lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Well, you're talking about the 13-month lunar calendar and that we've been cut off of it, and that is a very important point. I think the entire cult that runs the world is a cult of control, and it's all about time control.
I think they're
And
sun worshippers. That's why we're on the solar calendar. That's why we're in the solar system. That's why we're in all the things that has to do with the sun. That's why you have the coronavirus, the corona of the sun. Everything is about sun worshiping. That's what if you got to keep the root that they really are sun worshippers. And what's so bad is I've got tons of friends. I used to be a Mormon. I went on Mormon mission. I did all that stuff. I used to be around fanatics on the Christian side. But you got to remember, they're just as fanatic believing on their side. And the calendar, their solar calendar and their dates, those are their holy dates. Those are the ones that they worship, like our Christmas, Easter, Valentine's Day. They have their own. It's the same thing.
yeah, and listen to this. For people who aren't in a cult or who think they aren't, every New Year's Eve, if you count down the ball dropping at midnight, guess what? You're participating in an ancient cult that venerates the dog star Sirius, which reaches its highest point at midnight on New Year's Eve, and the ball drop symbolizes its subsequent fall. So, way to go, devil worshippers. And
Yeah,
everyone, it's the default.
that's why the solar calendar goes with their religion because they created it in their religion, and that's why it works with them.
Well,
It's their calendar.
the default is Mystery Babylon, and I actually think that they've taken this old paradigm, these old religious worldviews, and they've superimposed it on the modern mind, but they've cloaked it in science. And I've maintained for several years now that they name their rockets after dead sun gods because these are the obelisks of the day, and that the burning of the obelisk is a very significant rite, and it has to do with the union of the earth god and the sky goddess. So the rocket launching up is an obelisk, and it's the nightly conjugal visit that leads us to have the sun the next day. So I think it's
Yeah, the
all.
last one that must end up. It looked like it was the film was jerking backwards and forwards. That was so lame. The one rocket they just sent off recently. And of course, they're probably half of them were. Did you see the one rocket they sent off on the replay that half of it glitched out?
Yes, and I like those glitches. I mean, because that shows you that they're inserting fake glitch. It is a fake glitch. They do fake glitches because I mean, it looks fake to me. Did it look
So
real
you
to
don't
you?
think that actually was could have been a hologram or anything like that, or you think they really did that on purpose?
It's hard to say. I think they're past the point of taking the risks of playing with expensive fireworks, and I think they're more likely to CGI everything. But
Yeah.
these last few launches have been underwhelming. I was thinking that the Inspiration 4 would give us some new views of the Earth, and they only give you a small portion of the globe at a time. And what's worse, it's confusing anyway, is the night side of the Earth is pitch black at night. But when the ISS has it, the Earth, wherever there's land, is lit up like Christmas. So what is the case? Can we see the lights of the cities from above or not? It depends. It's like
Yeah,
apparently.
we know we're never going to get nowhere with that. Okay, this is one thing I told one of my friends. He's a physicist supposedly when he's a fire chief in Cal. I'm 62, so I got all these older guys I know. So I told him, I said, you really believe? Let's go to the equinox. So it's supposed to be half day and half light perfectly everywhere around the globe, right? So you go to sunandcalcdate.com and you can see just on their records that the equinox for certain parts of the world are anywhere from 4 to 8 days apart. And so how do they explain that? I mean, you can't even go past that. You know, where's your equinox at? Yeah, I'm sure you know about that, right?
No, actually, I'd have to look into that because it sounds like you've studied this, but I'd have to look at the actual image to see it for myself. But I agree with you though that these dates, the equinoxes and the solstices, are the major holidays that the elite or the cryptopsy honor, and these are the days that they have their ceremonies. And whether you know it or not, you're participating. Even the Super Bowl takes place on Imbolc, Candlemas, celebration of the sun god's weaning. And the way you would celebrate it, according to one book on witchcraft I had, was you would have the goddess representative bare chested paraded through the green pastures, green fields. Think about the Super Bowl, the green field, and then you would have the sun god representative. Well, here you had Janet Jackson, and then you had Justin Timberlake. So he represents the weaned sun god, and she represents the goddess. And then they rip off her shirt, and she's got the sun symbol on her nipple. Like, that was not a wardrobe flaw. That was not some kind of wardrobe malfunction. That was a ritual for the public, and we were all celebrating some pagan rite to the sun who's just been weaned.
Yeah, it was all those. I agree with you on all those special events, the Oscars, everything. They're on their special days. So those are their holidays of worship, showing praise to whatever God they're praising that day. I understand that. All those things are, you know. And the Super Bowl,
Yep. Hey, I got a new caller coming in. Appreciate it. Call back anytime.
All right.
Infinite Plane Radio.
Greetings, Tim. It's 5 minutes.
Hey, 5 minutes of fame. Great. Good to hear from you again.
Likewise, man. I'm so glad you're back on. I was getting bored with the reruns.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know. I believe it. But we're on for good now. I've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that we.
Yeah, I know you're a very busy guy. I'm watching you bloom again, and I'm very proud of you for shutting down that agitator, man.
Oh yes, lawfare. That's the thing. I mean, you waste a lot of time, and I think if it gets to the courtroom, you've both already lost. But yeah, it's.
I'll tell you a really quick story. I got a few things I want to say, but I won't be more than 5 minutes. All right. So a while ago, you'd be sitting in New York City, and I'm a smoker. It's not a smart thing to do, but I smoke. And somebody comes up to me and like, "Hey man, can I buy a cigarette from you?" Usually people like, "Can I borrow a cigarette?" Meanwhile, you'll never see them again. So, basically, "Can you give me a cigarette?" But these people say, "Can I buy a cigarette from you?" And I turn to them and I say, "Well, I don't have a license to sell tobacco, but you're welcome to have one." So I'll give him a cigarette, and he'll be like, "Take the dollar, man. Please just take the dollar." I said, "I'm not selling you a cigarette for $1. I'm not selling you a cigarette for any money. Take the cigarette and leave me alone. You're starting to bother me." What that turns out to be is entrapment. These are police officers. And what they do is you give them a cigarette, they hand you $1, you don't think about it, you take it. Next thing you know, you're getting thrown in the back of a squad car because you're selling tobacco without a license. And that's a true story. Now, if you remember that guy who, before George Floyd in Brooklyn, who got choked by the police, I can't remember his name.
Eric Garner. Eric Garner was the one who was selling the cigarettes in front of the shop.
That's what happened to Eric Gardner. He was outside of his store, but he was known to sell Lucy's. That was he would sell Newports for 50 cents a piece, so it was a little different. But the guy went up to him and was like, "Hey, man, let me get a cigarette." He was like, "Yeah, 2 for $1. Gave him 2 for $1, boom, they wanted to arrest him, and he was trying to resist. And then that swirled out of, So, like, what I was saying is I could have been dead. If I would have took this guy's dollar and I would have been dumb, who knows what would have happened? I would have 10 cops on me, trying to, like, this is a silly little thing I want to stand up for, and the more you resist, the more they apply pressure on your neck. And that, So I had a few thoughts about things that are going on in the world today, and I thought I'd share them with you. So I had a dream, and I woke up this morning pissed. But the dream I had was that I was thinking about the equipment that was left in Afghanistan, and I said, what would be the reason why our president would do that? And it hit me. So now we have all this equipment in Afghanistan, right? We have the Taliban all over the bases, and they're figuring out how to use everything, right? Now, we took in an extreme amount of army-aged Afghanistanians that never were translators or helpers of us or anything. They just got on the plane with no ID and were brought here, and now they're living on military bases. What I think that they would do is they're going to learn how to use the equipment, speak to each other over Facebook chat, messenger, or whatever, and teach them. You go here, you press this button, this fires the gun, this turns on the rotor, this is how you fly the helicopter, this is how you turn on this tank, this people carrier, this gun, whatever. And if you remember the Fort Hood shooting with Nazim Hassan, the doctor, who wound up shooting all these people on the military base about 6 or 7 years ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the soldier of Allah, the psychiatrist who claimed.
Right, he was
Yeah,
prescribing everybody Prozac, and then at the same time he went on. Do you remember it took like 3 hours for them to actually get guns into the hands of the troops, and the police were on the base and everything to stop this guy? It was literally, you're on an army base, but nobody has any weapons.
Yeah, I remember that was a bit of some people were pretty mad about it, that they were unarmed.
Just imagine, instead of one Nazim Hassan, you get about 300 of them on a base, and they all start running, jump into the equipment, know what to do. And it's better than shipping all the equipment from Afghanistan back to America to go to war with us. They'll just use our stuff.
That's actually brilliant. It's like Trojan horse, and you wouldn't know because what they're bringing is in their minds. It's the training. That's fascinating. Interesting.
Well,
point.
they could get it here. They're already in America now. So, like, for the odds of somebody who's in the Taliban right now and in Afghanistan, I mean, if you're an American citizen in Afghanistan right now, good luck getting America. It's probably not going to happen. So, if you're a Taliban, it's probably definitely not going to happen. But they're already here because they took the last flight out. Now, you communicate on phones, and everything that they learn in Afghanistan sitting in American equipment, they could tell you what to do with the American equipment in front of your face while you're on a cot in an army base. And don't worry about anybody shooting you because nobody has any guns.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's probably likely.
All right, and here's my...
That's probably
here's
likely. I know you're right.
I know
on that.
where you stand on the vax and how you feel it's benign, but I read a lot of stuff and it bothers me with this mRNA stuff because I know about the animal trials, and one of the things was upon re-exposure, like all the possums died. So they got that antibody-dependent problem with the vaccine. It's like the equivalent of MRSA. Like, we overprescribed prescriptions so much that MRSA wound up being created by us. So people would take an antibiotic for everything, and then these certain germs that other germs fight and kill, those germs are no longer there, so they actually evolve inside of our body, and then you have stuff like MRSA, which, basically we got like one or two antibiotics that can take care of it out of, thousands of antibiotics. And they're saying if that evolves one more time, we're all doomed. Okay, that's the same thing that kind of happens with this, virus thing. I don't know if it's a common cold or if it really is a virus or if it really is made in the lab or whatever, but, I had it. It kicked my butt until I took some OTC medicine. And I really believe if I went to the ICU, they would have put me in a room, gave me nothing, and I'd be dead now. So anyway, that story is okay. When they invented this mRNA jab, since we never isolated any virus, they asked the Chinese people to dictate the genetic code. So they were on the email or phone or whatever, and they were like, here it is. It's GATTACAGGGBA, whatever it is, right? And they did the code like that in digital to the CRISPR machine, which made the digital code for the mRNA in this vaccine. And I got to thinking, what if they gave us the code for not the COVID? And as you could tell, most of these people in the emergency room now are double vaccinated. No matter what they tell you, I have friends, insiders in the hospital, they tell me, it's like 80, 90% of these people with the two vaxes are getting sick, and they're blaming it on the unvaccinated. But the fact of the matter is these people have a weakened immune system and these spike proteins going crazy in them and whatnot. Okay, but what if that jab they gave was not based on the code of this disease, but based on the code of a disease that they have ready to release? And now they want the whole military, all the people, all the children, all of this and all of that to get it. And when they release that new virus out into the air, that was from word of mouth from the Chinese, it links up exactly with that new virus, and we all die like the possums on re-exposure.
Wow, that's probably gonna happen. Out of
I
all
made
the,
it.
I mean, out of all the scenarios, that's more likely than most, I guess I could say.
Wrote it as a script, they'd say it's unbelievable. But you know what? If you told people what's going on in the world right now 2 years ago, they would say it was unbelievable. So I'll leave it at that. And if it does happen, remember you heard it on Infinite Plane first. Good night, Tim.
All right, hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it very much. And that's why I've been saying, hey, vax the left. Let the people who are a little more authoritarian, who think that you ought to donate your body to science while you're still alive, let them go first, and we'll see. The old Chinese possum trick, said user offline. A bunch of vax addicts. I'm wondering, do you have to show a pass to get in anywhere, or can you just pull up your sleeve and show the track marks? Your mama says we're all gonna die. I'm more worried about the asteroids. People are wearing masks. I'm wearing a helmet. I'm ready for asteroid Armageddon. I have a short clip here I want to play of Charles Manson.
As human beings, put all our fear on one little guy. You're afraid to let him out. He might break all the toys. Why do you say little guy?
And now here's George W. Bush.
But I really don't know how yet. I'm learning. You're teaching me how to grow up.
If you can spot the difference, let us know. Nobody else can. All right, let us continue. We have a few things I was going through in the links here at fakeworld.news. A little bit of symbolism on your Oreo cookie. Uraeus, the symbol of the goddess. It's a snake that the pharaoh wear on their headdress on the forehead. So it's a cobra. But anyway, it's spelled Oraios in the ancient Greek name for it, Oreos. Well, the symbol on the Oreo cookie happens to look remarkably similar to this cobra on the headdress. And there's an Ouroboros serpent eating its own tail on the outer ring, a Maltese cross, among other things. All kinds of occult, Illuminati, satanic symbolism packed in one cookie. They should probably put that in a commercial and they'll sell more because of it. A lot of these companies play into the symbolism, and the people noticing it helps them mock it. Let's see, commenter here goes by the name Blob, says, love your show. Great every time. I always thought Turmeric Jones was more palatable in his incarnation as Bill Hicks before the government contract. Oh, yes. A lot of people thought that Bill Hicks was more entertaining than Alex Jones. You can still hear the Bill Hicks in the commercials. Max Parker 822. This is a tweet from somebody from a couple months ago, and I saved it. He says, has anyone done the math to figure out how long it's going to take for these unvaccinated blanks to die so the rest of us can move on with our lives? And then you have these late night talk show hosts like Jimmy Kimmel, these government jesters talking about denying ICU beds to the unvaxxed, essentially turning hospitals into death camps, I guess. Like, when did that become a thing? Now, if you have any doubts whatsoever about Jones and Bill Hicks, it's revealed in the pictures. But if you refuse to see, if your eyes won't let you see, if you think 2 + 2 is 5, there's a narrative structure that supports this. You got to look into their relationship with their shared producer, Kevin Booth. But their teeth are the same. Their faces are the same. I'm surprised people have trouble with this one. Westward Thinking sent me this one. He said the number 13. Oh, yes. Let's go into that for a minute. Okay. A lot of synchronicities with this one. So you all remember the Vegas shooting, October the 1st, 2017. And that event is really what kicked off this new wave of, I think, real authoritarian censorship on the internet, because the media wanted to insist that they be the ones who provide information in times of crises. Well, someone had found many examples in the movie called The Hangover of predictive programming foreshadowing the Harvest Festival shooting. This is a 4-minute video by Manipulated Living 42. I'm surprised this person only has 15 subscribers. I'll put a link to the channel in the chat. You'll want to watch this in its entirety. Yurt Mama says, Lady Gaga is selling some Oreos. Oh yeah, she does. I saw those. And I thought there was some kind of Pizzagate connection there too. Now, if I blocked a phone number, it's because you threatened to kill Dr. Fauci or something, or bemoaned your inability to threaten to kill him on BitChute. And it's like, you know what? I don't have any problem with the guy. I actually like him. And I'm starting to like Joe Biden. The characters, anyway. Okay, this is a short compilation of connections between the movie The Hangover and what occurred in Las Vegas October the 1st. So I'm going to go ahead and play a few clips in here. It's going to show you the opening credits here. It's going to show you the opening credits to The Hangover. And the immediate association here is to the scene where Stephen Paddock shot all those people. Now, a couple of things. Las Vegas means the Meadows. That's an important plot point here. Las Vegas means the Meadows. They were in a fenced-in area, which you would call a paddock. So here they are in a fenced-in area, a paddock on the Meadows, and a guy named Stephen Paddock comes out and shoots them at a harvest festival. Well, what do you do to sheep or animals that are in a fenced-in area? You harvest them in the fall. So this was a ritualistic event. Let's go ahead and play a few clips here.
There's too much confusion. I can't get no relief.
Okay, so it opens up with, again, we're talking about the movie The Hangover. The main characters on Joker cards. And of course, the killing happened during the concert with Jason Aldean. All kinds of playing cards figure prominently in the symbolism. I mentioned Stephen Paddock. Okay, the next part is this. The movie opens up with a song called 13. And the lyrics say, I have the number 13 tattooed on my neck, while Stephen Paddock has the number 13 tattooed on his neck.
Tattooed on my neck.
All right, and then an hour into the movie, you have scenes that correlate with the outside of the shooting, where these characters are ducking behind a car, and many of the things that they say happen to correlate with the shooting, as though they were actually at the shooting. And this is actually right there where the shooting happened. And what's more, one of the main characters who causes all the problems in this, his birth date, and what's his name is it Zach Gandolfini or something like that? Can anybody fill me in? I don't have it readily accessible here, and I'm happy for it. When I don't know the name of some celebrity who's meant to degrade everything, I'm happy I don't know. But anyway, this character's birth date happens to be October the 1st. He uses phrases in this conversation like sharp shooter, and in the backdrop you have the Luxor Hotel. Okay, here's what's more. They're walking into the hotel room, and the song that's playing is Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight.
Do we need a musical?
Hey! Shh.
Now that song's playing in the movie, again, In the Air Tonight, well, right before the shooting start. Now check this out. The thing is, the characters walk into a room where Mike Tyson is blaring this song. And he really likes the part where the drums kick in all at once, like a machine gun. So he has everyone pause, and so he can air drum.
This is my favorite part coming up right now.
Okay, so at the event in Vegas, right before the shooting starts, country singer Jason Aldean is giving a closing performance. And what do we hear? again at the opening of his set. Well, In the Air Tonight. My point being, lots of connections between the Route 91 Harvest Festival shooting and the movie The Hangover. I'll put a link in the chat if you want to subscribe to that channel. Again, it's Manipulated Living 42. You can also find that link at fakeworld.news. Okay, now I will take calls again from the caller that I banned. I see he's in the chat. I just want to make sure that we're not making any sort of statements that will get the channel cut down. That's a little counterproductive. And I don't really have any passionate hatred for any of these characters. Okay, now check this out. Do you remember back in July, I was talking about Jeff Bezos going to space and the significance of him in the capsule, or the capstone of the obelisk, poking his head into the heavens, or space being the new heaven. And I said that this space program represents the Tower of Babel, all the nations of the world in a united effort to go up. We're all going together into space. One mission, a singular mission, one language, the internet. So we have this shared heaven that we're all reaching for. And I'm correlating it to the Tower of Babel, and I have for some time, for a number of reasons. And I think it's being prepped to fall, but I think they had to more or less complete it. They had to actually reach the heavens before they could tear it down. And I think that's what happens next. And I think the tearing down of the tower also represents a sort of a blackout on information. Like, so for example, the significance of Bezos is the company Amazon and its relationship to books. All the books in the world, A to Z, Amazon, right? And what's more, here he is with the space program poking his head into the heavens. He's got Amazon, this company, and he's got these headquarters that they've actually designed to look like the Tower of Babel. And if you've seen the design for the Amazon headquarters, it's been compared to that. And I think this is why. But what's more, the books that they sell now, these ebooks, are all going onto these devices, which you call what? The Kindle Fire. So you think about, Kindle and the Fire, and it all relates to this thing of this idea of digital book burning. And Amazon was really prominent last year in its efforts, in the effort to censor the right, pulling servers, book burning left and right, pulling books, censoring content. You can't sell stuff that has a Q on it on Amazon merch, for example. So my point being, I think they're poised not to be the biggest booksellers, but to be the biggest book burner when they tear down this modern Tower of Babel. I think that's intrinsic in this symbolism here. And then, of course, the other aspect to it, when you look at the symbolism of the tower, is like in the tarot, and this all matters. The symbolism that we see is all integrated into the same stories, and the tarot cards tie into this stuff because every card is connected to one of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, 1, and 2, 52 cards in deck correlate to the 52 weeks. It's actually tied into our calendar. It's astrotheological. So if you look at the Tower card, you have a couple of individuals falling from the sky, and the lightning bolt strikes the tower, and it's got a crown on top. And again, I think the crown is a very significant symbol, and Bezos, 57, had actually stepped down from Amazon on February 2nd. I think it was the 33rd day of the year. And right before his launch, it was said that Jeff Bezos handed his crown to a successor at the company so he could focus on space. But I find this card to be very interesting because you have the two individuals falling from the sky, and we had these two billionaires making a big show of going up really high and falling. And I think it's all foreshadowing of the next 9/11, which is what I'm referring to here when I say the tower falls. I think the symbolism is a continuation of the symbolism of 9/11. If you remember, 9/11, 2001, New York City, the towers fall and they build it back with a single tower, the One World Tower. But this was all preceded by symbolism in movies, like most of you here listening know about, but also the largest cathedral in the world, the Cathedral of St. John the Divine there in New York, actually has scenes of New York as Babylon being destroyed. So I think there's a pretty strong correlation that you could make the connection here between this modern Tower of Babylon, the space program, also represented by this One World Trade Tower. All this one world-ism. That's the Tower of Babel in my view. And that's what they're about to tear down, this structure that's being built up. So they hit the Great Reset button, but I don't think everything's fallen yet. And I have another clue to this, because when Bezos took off on July the 20th, 2021, on the anniversary of 1969's Apollo 11 landing, he took off at 9:11 a.m. Like, what are the odds? 9:11 a.m. And that's not all of the symbolism. That's just a few little hints here and there. The timing of these things says quite a lot. I'm awaiting what I would consider to be a space 9/11. And this is all against the backdrop of numerous stories in the media floating around about cracks in the space station. I think there's a crack in the tower. Now, this is an interesting little story here. I was a little surprised by this, but kind of not really. So recently, I've been talking about Astrocrete. Most of you know what Astrocrete is. If you've been listening, I've been obsessed with it for like the last week. Scientists have found a way to create building materials out of lunar dust and blood. As in, the astronauts can put their blood in the lunar dust, get some blood mud, and make a hut. Same with Mars. Astrocrete. Astronaut blood can be used to make concrete on Mars. The Astrocrete itself is a dull shade of brown, but can be shaped into any form and can be used for 3D printing. See, I happen to think if you get shipped off to Mars, they're probably going to replace you with a CGI simulation for your family back home to interact with, but I think you'll be put into some kind of a wood chipper and spit into a 3D printer and then, shat out into a space igloo. I mean, this is dark, but this is like Soylent Green. Soylent Green, the movie about society cannibalizing the old, the people who are dying, and nobody knows about it. It's the ultimate in sustainability. It's very green in that sense. So, Soylent Green came out in 2022, and I've been saying for some time that 2022 is going to be the year of Soylent Green, and we have all this talk of Bill Gates buying up farms, talking about synthetic meat, and I'm like, well, what do they have in store for us? Well, now I'm seeing Soylent Green happening in real time, and it's this Astrocrete. And I'll call it Soylent Red, but that's what it is. It's cannibalism, to put it bluntly. So now this is another twist. I talk a lot about the Pixar film WALL-E and the significance to today and how this contains all the same symbolism, the numbers. Okay, there's a couple of things about WALL-E. It's a retelling of the story of Noah's flood for the youth today. Absent the Bible, this is just a retelling where basically mankind destroys the world with our wickedness and global warming, climate change. It all happens. So we leave on a space ark. So mankind lives in a space ark. Earth is covered in junk. And when it becomes habitable again, we go back. And just like in the Bible, a dove flies over to Noah to tell him that it's safe to go back, the dove with the olive branch. And it's not a symbol of peace, by the way. It's a symbol of, the guy that murdered the world says it's cool to go back for you. So the symbol of the dove represents you can go back to the world. WALL-E is about this white robot that looks like a dove that is searching for organic life on Earth, and she finds it. So she goes back to the space station and tells the crew, the commander, you can go back to the Earth. And the story is they come back to the Earth and they say, hey, look, we've oppressed a robot underclass. We're fat, we're lazy, and we've lost touch with nature. So they have a communist revolution at the end of the movie, an agrarian reformation. That's just one subtext. So they're teaching your kids Global warming is going to destroy the world. Might as well become communists. Capitalism is exploitative of the underclass, the robot class, as they're shown in this film. So that's one level of it. There's another side to it that I won't get into that has to do with the esoteric, the fertility rites, the stuff that's not appropriate for children, for sure. And I'll gloss over the 113 symbolism for now. What I want to focus on is this. It turns out that, and there's so many COVID connections in this movie, by the way. But anyway, it turns out that it's in all likelihood the robot that controls the show had made the decision in the interest of sustainability and keeping people alive that it would make sense to have the people served to the other people. So they've been engaging in cannibalism for several hundred years.
Cadaver. Huh. Which brings us to the grimmest part of all. Sure, I've demonstrated how the passengers and the Axiom could have come about eating each other, both in terms of necessity and in the logistics of how such a system could come about, but up to this point it's been mostly speculation. It's time to prove this grim truth using science. Just look at the passengers aboard the ship. I'd say that they're a bit overweight. And that's not me judging them, that's a big point in the movie. The by and large CEO makes the claim that
Due to the effects of microgravity, you and your...
So what he's explaining here is that there's no way these people could have remained this fat for this long, consumed enough calories to have maintained those bodies. And what's more, he even explains that it's likely that in the movie, and there are hints of it everywhere, that the people are being ground up into shakes is what's happening. And so that's what they're always slurping through the straws. And there are hints everywhere. It's kind of subliminal. It's not out in the open, but yeah, it does appear to be the case that Wall-E is a movie about Soylent Green.
comes through a straw. I mean,
that's the level of cannibalism here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open phones. Commenter, if you want to call in and make threats about murdering public people, I would suggest you just call your local police and do it. Call the FBI. Save me the trouble here. And you have to understand that when you do that kind of thing, people will suspect you of being an agent. I mean, who really thinks that way? That's got to be a troll. So that's a video called Wall-E's Feast of Flesh. So those of you who aren't watching the chat, if you want to join in the chat, go to infiniteplane.radio or darkmatter.radio, either domain. And any of the chats, they all integrate. But yeah, we've had a little issue here with glowies. If you don't know what glowies are, you'll have to listen to the replay. Okay, got a few other things to go through here. Okay, this is a new one. This is a big one, I think. So there was a murder I wanted to talk about. This one was filmed, a supposed murder of an individual in, I believe it was in Portland. His name was Barry Washington, and it happened at a bar called the Capitol. It's been compared to the Emmett Till lynching. So his name is Barry Washington Jr., killed by a white man after complimenting his girlfriend. So the story is basically that they're at a bar, there's a bar fight, the video's inconclusive, but it's been compared to Emmett Till. And so I had to look into Emmett Till because there's a reason why they would be bringing this up. Social media influencers are making these comparisons. And so you have that basic comparison. A similar motivation. The Emmett Till one was probably worse. I mean, this other guy was shot. This was something else, dragged out of his house. Created a huge stir, of course, because of the brutality of it, and you had an open casket funeral. Now, I looked up Emmett Till in the news, and it turns out, and this could just be coincidental, but it turns out that for the last few months, many of these Emmett Till Historical Society sites, many of these memorials have been vandalized, defaced, graffitied, stolen, shot up. So what is up with all these Emmett Till historical markers and monuments being destroyed? Bullet-riddled Emmett Till sign on display at the National Museum of American History. Now, I think these most likely fall into the category of fake hate crimes. They fall in the 66%, probably instigated. But the reason why I'm pointing this out is that now you have after months of these Emmett Till signs being taken down and vandalized. Here's one: Emmett Till memorial sign still missing after 66 years of 66th anniversary of his death was last August. So they had a sign there, and on the 66th anniversary, some racist presumably stole it. So again, against the backdrop of all these Emmett Till memorials being vandalized, you have an individual killed in a way that's reminiscent. So I looked into it. His name is Barry, which I thought was interesting because Barry is what the QAnoners call Barack Obama. They believe his real name is Barry Soetoro. The bar was called the Capitol, and his name is, of course, Barry Washington. I think these are kind of interesting. And his middle name is Christ or Cristino. He's 22 years old. So these are the main points that kind of stand out in terms of the pattern and if this fits a bigger picture. So I thought, well, 22 stood out, and it has. And I've been talking about this, that this year has been very consistent with a lot of the media psyops fitting certain patterns, like Gabby Petito, the disappeared Van Lifer, 22. We just had the 22-year-old football player getting shot. This guy, 22. COVID-22 is out. You had the social media influencer with the 22 on her shirt falling through the table. Virgin had their 22 Unity launch. ISS has been up there for 22 years. And then you had two assassins who each used 22s, Saran and John Hinckley, being released. Just a bunch of 22s. And then I just get another headline, I think it was about Colin Kaepernick on the Madden 22 game. And you know there's this thing called the Madden 22 curse, by the way. And I think the way it works is anybody who appears on the heading of the Madden game never plays again. It says the curse has been notorious for taking players out, giving them the worst years when they're featured on the cover of Madden. Madden cover curse 2022. The curse is real. The Madden NFL curse. By the numbers, is the Madden cover curse real? EA Sports reveals the Madden 22 cover. So my point is this. There's already this thing called the Madden 22 curse, like the 27 Club or the Die Young Club. You have these various ways that people kind of mythologize these events that seem to be disparate but are in fact connected in some synchronistic way. And I think it's very pertinent here that Kaepernick is now the recipient of the Madden curse. We'll see how that turns out. Someone says, Dog Bounty Hunter. Oh, he's hunting the Van Lifer, isn't he? Doug the Bounty Hunter. I thought that was Marjorie Taylor Greene with biker shades. Okay. Oh, by the way, that story, I do have a take on the story, the Gabby Petito story. I actually think it's fake. I think it's a ritualistic personification of Virgo. And I believe that this was a story of Virgo as Persephone being abducted and taken into Hades, which is why they discover her body, just as Virgo becomes Libra. I think that was a play. We were watching the Spring Maiden being abducted and taken into the underworld. And many of the photographs of Gabby, many of these pictures actually back this up. You actually have a picture of her posing in front of a mural of wings, and one of her legs is slightly bent. Looks exactly like Virgo. Hand Planer says, Tim, did you ever watch Better Call Saul? Any connections with his brother and his Wi-Fi electricity and cell signal phobia? No, I have not watched it. I would like to, though. I'm very close to the Breaking Bad tour, and I see their meth van driving around. It's a tour. It's not a real meth van anymore. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, how's it going, Tim? This is Way BMX.
Oh, awesome.
I just had something to add about the Petito case that I found like a really strange connection or synchronicities. There's you this will go into other internet culture. So it's like the Chris Chan lolcow sort of personality that was on the internet, right? Have you heard of that person?
Go on. I think I know who you're talking about, but
Well, yeah, Chris Chan, like the tranny autistic that ended up raping their old senile mother, right? So it starts with that. So there was the phone call that was released where he's talking to this girl. Some internet sleuths find out who it actually was that he was talking to. It was this girl named Isabella, and it come to find out that her parents are glowies. They are CIA or clowns. They're CIA operatives, and and they come to find out like this girl is a troll herself and into pretty dark kind of pretty dark stuff. Anybody can
okay.
look up this girl Bella. But so it links with that, and then I go because I was just like sort of appalled at like how detestable they're painting this person out to be, who may or may not be real. I don't know, but I don't know if Chris Chan is real. That's what this is all about. The the sort of setup of it all, but the phone call was started it all. So we found out who this girl's parents are and that she's using some sort of clout to be in her Texas Tech school and stuff, where she's trolling people and apparently causing people to commit suicide and stuff like that. Well, then it gets outed who her mother is and who her father is. They got doxxed along with her, and they are they work for the CIA, and they started bringing her out on like Fox News and stuff, talking about domestic abuse cases and stuff like that, trying to paint the picture for this Petito case. So they're like using this girl who has a psychotic daughter apparently, and then they're rolling her out and she's supposedly a psychologist.
This exactly. Okay, this is great what you're discussing here, because a lot of these social media influencers are very questionable. I think many of them are actors, and anything they can do in the movies, they can do in the news. And I look at someone like Gabby Petito, and you take that story and the ritualistic aspects of it aside, and it turns out she's a social media influencer. And what's more, she was in a Sandy Hook music video after the kids died. She was in that video that they put together after the fact. Yeah, so she's a Sandy Hooker. What are the odds? And you know who did her, they brought out the guy that autopsied Adam Lanza to comment on the condition of her body.
Right, yeah. So I had seen that. It was like confusion. People had thought that he did the autopsy and all that. But yeah, I saw he just made a statement about it, yeah. And like the case, like they found the location of like the van because of another social media influencer, a family RVing family, and that's how they even got the location. So it's all painted. It's a big social media, a lot of links all over.
Yep, exactly. Movies being played out in real life. It's theater. And some of these characters have multiple stage appearances. Like for Gabby Petito to be a Sandy, when I say Sandy Hooker, I mean people who are making money off the government, like they're selling themselves. She's part of that thing, and then part of this. And then you have CNN. You have their medical analyst, Dr. Wen, was actually at the Boston Marathon during the bombing, treating the so-called patients. So we have this major league medical analyst for CNN, big voice out there saying, you don't have a constitutional right to leave your house. And she was over there at Boston. So yeah, they're all stagers.
Yeah, I had the link for this lady's I'll post it in the chat when I go back in there. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that in there because there's like so many synchronicities. It all seems, with the ages, with numbers, numerology, date with the dates, and yeah, it's like, and then that's why I was just like kind of like blown away. It's like, oh, now it links to like this other lolcow sort of, which is like, these goofy people on the internet that then people like hate because they're so goofy and stuff like that, and it gets tied into that. And then like an evil troll who's the daughter, a daughter of the psychologist that's now talking about this case. It's like, it was just, I don't know, a lot. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that
Yes,
person.
excellent points.
Sort of other end of the internet sort of linking to this one. I find really weird.
I'll be looking into those connections as well. And hey, for anybody here who doesn't know, because I know the name Way BMX from a lot of the chat raids. So how long have you been listening to Infinite Plane Society, Infinite Plane Radio?
When did you come out? It was no, proved no domes on Flat Earth, no dome days.
Okay.
So you had like way long ago.
Cool.
But yeah, I've I like sort of I think I would call in like drunk and stuff before, but yeah, so sorry for doing that. I cut back a lot on drinking, and I sort of like tried to cut back on just being in chat and like being involved a lot, because you sort of like wonder, is my perspective being skewed by maintaining within an echo chamber of sorts? So you sort of become like, when we're so deep into all this stuff, so you sort of want to question where your own thinking is coming from. So
yes,
exactly.
Exactly.
Now I've been back. I was bored, so.
Cool. Well, hey, glad to have you back, and I appreciate you calling. And we try to keep this thing a think tank, which is like, it's like an echo chamber, but it has open doors, so it doesn't become an echo chamber.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you. I don't think that it was.
But I'm with you on that. You
I
have to. How would you know? I take time. I take time every day. I take time, like probably more time than I should, but I do take time to disconnect. It's important, and to realize that there is the real world, there's the staged world, and there are people who exist between the two. There's those of us who know the difference. So anyway, great for having you on, and call back anytime.
Thank you so much, Tim. Yeah, I'll see you. I'll see you in chat. Peace.
All right, everyone. That's Way BMX from way back during the chat raids when we broke YouTube. Do you remember the Million Penguin chat? We had 1 million penguin emojis put in some NBA chat and shut it down. We used to do these things, these chat raids, where we would build up a few hundred people in the chat, and then we would go to some random, unrelated YouTube channel and hijack their chat room and just use it and change the conversation, and then go somewhere else and do the same. It got a little more elaborate. I believe we triggered Mike Cernovich. That's why he's blocked me. I've been trying to figure this out. I was looking at my Twitter block list. So if I go to Twitter and I go to, is it just Cernovich? Yeah, Cernovich, you're blocked. Why am I blocked? I'm blocked because we raided his chat a few years ago and got him to say that the earth was flat or something like that. All right, going through some comments. Hand Planer says, last June I camped 4 nights. On the last night, I saw Starlink without light pollution. I told everyone in camp within earshot. Okay. Now, you saw Starlink, but the question is, did you see orbiting CubeSats at 185 miles above your head? Or did you see a bunch of balloons, maybe a convoy, maybe strung together like a train? I would have to ask you what time it was, like what time at night? Hand Planer, if you can answer that question, that'd be great. What time at night did you see a train of Starlink satellites? X Divine Matrix says, did you sell flat earth necklaces? I think I bought one. Yeah, I had a Gumroad account or Gear Bubble. And I put one of those AE maps in one of those necklaces where they put the bubble over it, and sold a ton of those things. That's one of the reasons why I think our channel was so fun, is we were constantly doing things like billboards and chat raids and creating products that would outlast the censorship. Sleepy Random says, what are the odds that one influencer would solve another influencer's case? Sure, I was thinking about this with Kenosha. In Kenosha, everything looks so real. And I had a hard time. I still do. I'm trying to figure out, how did they blow up Gage Grosskreuz's arm like that? Is that a squib or is it real? Can't be real. And one of the things that always has me leaning towards it's all fake is that all of the gunshot victims were treated by mass media reporters, by friends of Tucker Carlson. Like, what are the odds? Okay, Hand Planer says, I saw them at 11 p.m. So I would ask you this, Hand Planer. We all know, it depends on the time of the year, of course, but we all know that at night there's a column of darkness above you because you are presumably in the shadow of the earth. And if you look up, that shadow, according to the internet, extends out into space 800,000 miles. So it's almost 1 million miles of darkness above you. So I would ask, how at 11 o'clock at night are you going to see objects that are only visible when reflecting the sun if they're 180 miles above your head? They're not high enough to be outside of the umbra, and they don't have light bulbs. So my question again would be, how could they be reflecting the sun? How would that work at 11 o'clock at night? But I'd have to know where you were, what time of year. I guess it's slightly possible. Restless Bear says, Column of Darkness, good band name. Well, if you look up and there's a light above you, it has to be getting the light from somewhere. And so you just have to kind of look at where the Terminator light was. You can find many examples of the space station around sunset going above the person's head and then disappearing when it hits the Earth's shadow. Thirst donated $5. Appreciate that. And anybody wants to support this channel, even though we've been prohibited from monetizing on YouTube, we do have Streamlabs. There's a link in the chat, and you can put any kind of message on the screen, and I believe it even has text to speech. I'm not sure if it auto censors either. All right, let's go through some more of these links that I had set aside to discuss. Alex Jones getting sued by that group of Psywar operatives shows you that he's part of the program. All he'd have to do, I mean, this is the case with Owen Schroyer as well. All he would have to do is call into question the very existence of some of these characters. Owen Schroyer could probably request or subpoena Ashley Babbitt to make an appearance, because by every indication she's not dead. And some people still operate under the presumption that Ashley Babbitt is dead, that she's some kind of a martyr. Well, she's not. There's a video you can watch. It's called Everything Wrong with the Capitol Hill Riot in 21 Minutes, and it shows you clearly how that killing was in fact staged. I got a tweet here from Maya. R. Kelly did not kill himself. Yeah, that's a strange one. Apparently R. Kelly is going to dox, name and shame a couple other offenders in the industry, which is kind of weird because just the other day, Bill Cosby was out saying that, no, he's been railroaded. Bill Cosby says R. Kelly is railroaded like he was, that he's innocent. And I'm like, Bill Cosby's the only person who's actually saying that this guy is innocent. Even he's not. So just another reason there not to trust the Jello. Oh, this is a good one here. I'm going to play this whole clip. This is Ted Nugent. And he's commenting on, and this is just his opinion. It's not my opinion. A retweet's not an endorsement. But he's commenting on what he sees when he looks at the people who are unquestioningly going along with whatever the TV says.
Would you speak to the people who believe it is a worthwhile vaccine and it is saving lives? Are they just dead wrong? Are they been fed a line from the federal government?
Tim, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the people that went ahead and got the jab. I speak their language. I would speak to them thusly. Bah, 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 bah. They understand that.
Well, so all these millions of people that got the shots, they're just stupid?
Yep.
Yep. Again, it's not an endorsement. Just one man's opinion. And then I see a classroom here of a bunch of hostages, children hostages, captive audiences to communist brainwashers. I'm sorry, public school students wearing masks. Now, look, I happen to think the mask is a political tool. It's a religious garment. If you think it's a medical device, you're not being honest with yourself. You probably believe that NASCAR fans are chanting, "Let's go Brandon." That everyone in the world, all these events, all these sporting events are all chanting, "Let's go Brandon." Did you all follow along with the story? If you missed it, you had a NASCAR race where the audience is chanting F Joe Biden. So this reporter finds a guy named Brandon and has him talk about how he performed in the race. And she says, "Well, listen, they're all cheering for you. Let's go Brandon." When quite obviously they're not saying that. This is the very definition. This is the epitome of gaslighting.
Thank you to all of our partners. Oh my God, it's just such an unbelievable moment.
Brandon, you also told me, as you can hear the chants from the crowd, "Let's go, Brandon." Brandon, you told me you were going to kind of hang back.
Let's go, Brandon. And interestingly enough, her colleagues are actually praising her for thinking on her feet. So she's being complimented on her ability to lie. So she'll get promoted for that. Joe Biden throwing the 666, always shouting out their master.
I'm telling you, we're going to get this done.
When, Joe? When do we get the mark of the beast?
It doesn't matter when. It doesn't matter whether it's in 6 minutes, 6 days, or 6 weeks.
Okay. You want to get your mark of the beast done, doesn't matter, don't delay, but it could be in 6 months, 6 days.
It doesn't matter whether it's in 6 minutes, 6 days, or 6 weeks.
Interesting choice of numbers, Joe. And that's not the first time that we've seen him doing that. And I'm suggesting here that it's probably not a coincidence. 666 is encoded into everything tying into world governance. And this is the new world religion. And they want you all to take your injectable communion wafer. And when you really get down to it, the mark of the beast, the 666, it represents the sun king, the sun god, represented by the obelisk and probably by the needle. And that's all this is. It's a holy communion. Red Dragon says your ability to bow to the establishment. Yeah, exactly. Got to go through a couple memes. This is a great one. It's got the Joker on top, what people think a killer clown looks like. And then it has the reality, what a killer clown actually looks like. And you got you know who on the screen. Now, we may make fun of, poke fun of, or satirize, or even just accurately describe some of these clowns. But there's no hate. None. There's no time to even expend energy, hating people. We're just describing things. This is a careful analysis. So the reason why I had to cut off that caller is that I don't want people to think that this channel is somehow trying to instigate an insurrection or something like that, which we're not. Okay, let's see here. For the most part, activism is controlled on both sides anyway. It's like, you want to follow controlled opposition? Be my guest. You got soy boys on the left, Proud Boys on the right. You got boys and boys. It sounds like emotionally arrested political factions fighting for favor of big daddy government. Now, look on the screen here if you're looking. If you're not looking, just imagine. Basically here on the left, you have Joe Biden getting his booster the other day. And this is why I called him a lycanthrope. Because on his previous COVID shot, the one back in January, his arm was mostly smooth. Now he's got a full head of hair on the outside of his arm where he got the jab. Now I know it's not necessarily the case, correlation, causation, but has anyone else here aside, has anyone else here aside from being magnetic or glowing or whatever else happens? People are reporting the strangest things, but has anyone else come across that? Mitt Romney made the Black Eye Club and we've been talking about this symbolism. If you don't know what symbolism is, the cult of the all-seeing eye. We've been talking about this lately because Greta, of course, came out on the cover of The Guardian with this black goo dumped all over her head, and one of her eyes is covered. And if you actually go to their website, they made a creepy animation about it. But now, if you search Greta Guardian, just search those terms, you'll find all kinds of magazine covers, like The New Yorker, for example. And in most of these magazine covers, she's got one eye covered. There are some where she's got a black tear coming out of one eye, a shadow covers one eye. Very consistent across the board when it comes to this one eye symbolism. And I'm just pointing it out. She is probably born into the same club. And I think it overlaps with the Black Eye Club. A commenter, God, at the Infinite Plane Media Forum, just posted this, and I wanted to look into this one. She says, Terminator and The Matrix were originally written as one story. This person had suggested that Neo is John Connor, grown up. Has anybody else come across this? Sleepy Random says Greta's getting too old to play the Earthchild. Yeah, I thought so too, at first. But then later I thought, wait, no. They're going to probably keep this thing going. She'll act like a teenager the rest of her life, and she'll fit right in with the fascist left. Someone was asking if I had seen, let me get to your comments, Lynn Wood talking about no planes. Yes. Lynn Wood has actually gone as far as to say no planes, but he doesn't go far enough. I mean, he's right about no planes. If you ask me, there were no planes. If you look at the video footage that wasn't filtered by your media, no planes. But now Lynn Wood is going out there saying no planes, but he kind of still believes or goes along with the idea that 3,000 people died. And then my question is, well, don't you have to subtract the people that were supposedly on the planes? Trump-allied QAnon attorney L. Lynn Wood says 9/11 was a deep state fake. Very interesting character. Again, he stood by Kyle Rittenhouse long enough to bilk $4 million out of that and then left, leaving Kyle in jail to raise more money. Kyle's mom, Wendy, is pissed and is looking for him, trying to find Lynn Wood. Lynn Wood represented the parents of John Benet Ramsey, who might be Kate Perry. He represented Richard Jewell, the accused Olympics Centennial Park bombing. So he's one of these celebrity made-for-TV types. So to see him involved in Kenosha, and then he was the one calling for the hanging of Mike Pence. So he says, let's talk about CGI, computer-generated graphics. Do you know what CGI is? Do you know what deepfake videos are? He says, I know you know what Photoshop is. He says, on 9/11, what appeared to be a plane hit wasn't a dadgum thing. And the Pentagon got hit by a missile. There were no plane fragments. There were no coincidences. We got played. We got played by people who are so evil that they killed 2,800 Americans that day. They should go to jail. Okay, so maybe he did subtract the people on the plane. Wood rose to infamy working with Trump-allied attorney Sidney Powell to push the claims that the 2020 election was stolen. Sidney Powell, the Kraken, who passed on that job to Mike Lindell, crack smoker. Strange cast of characters. And I'm not convinced that I'm wrong, and I've been trying to disprove this theory, that Sidney Powell, the Kraken, is some kind of a disguise worn by Ann Coulter, so she can say whatever she wants without getting into any kind of trouble. Have you heard the voice of Sidney Powell? When you hear her voice, when you hear her speak, I think you'll agree that you're hearing the voice of Ann Coulter. Let me go ahead and find you a clip here. Now, if you don't know what Ann Coulter sounds like, you can kind of imagine nails scratching on a chalkboard, or actually, it sounds like this.
That the fraud exists in the DNA of all the software that was run by any voting system in the country. So they all are at risk of having been manipulated.
Now, you compare that to Ann Coulter, and it's literally the same person, in my opinion. Ann's obviously wearing some kind of a deep fake disguise, like what Lynn Wood was just talking about, deep fakes. And I've compared their voices enough, voice analysis, I'm convinced it fits. Beanpole and Coulter would fit inside of the Kraken, no doubt. Red Dragon says she's a meme, why she dressed like a Nazi. Yeah, exactly. She's always wearing these costumes. She's often wearing like the QAnon leather jacket. But I find these characters to be highly unbelievable. They look like they came out of some costume department. So a few things to look forward to in the coming days. Well, tomorrow, you got the Russian space crew taking off in the morning to go film a movie in space called The Challenge. So we'll be covering that. We have William Shatner, 90, taking off to space a week after that. So that's, further, I think that's further evidence that space has been so trivialized and it's being turned into a movie set, and it doesn't look good. I think that this is the end. I think it's jumped the shark, and even SNL has kind of caught on to this. In fact, I have a couple still shots from the Saturday Night Live spoof on this space race, and it actually has the space station getting one of its solar panels knocked off. It's kind of funny how these things are always somehow preceding real events, and so I'm kind of looking forward to see what happens with that. Space station has a crack in it, by the way. All right, I'm going through some comments. Molly Rowland says, the more I research, the faker every single piece of news about space seems. I feel like that's the case. I think it's mostly fantasy. I think the Astrocrete is a good example of this. And I just remain unconvinced that they're able to do what they claim to be doing because their special effects just aren't that believable. I guess, some of us are just too discriminating of audiences to be fooled by this really bad science fiction. That's why I've often compared what we do to Mystery Science Theater 3000, where you have a captive audience forced to watch bad sci-fi movies, presumably to drive them crazy. That's the motivation. And the characters are able to stay awake and stay sane. Or rather, they don't lose their minds because they make fun of these movies ceaselessly. Okay, I got another video someone wants me to play. Jason Whitlock did an edit here of Biden.
I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated. United States of America. No matter whether it's in 6 minutes, 6 days, or 6 weeks, we're going to get it done.
All right, there you have it. And those aren't the only examples. There are many, many more of Joe Biden with his shouting out to the devil. All right, everyone, thanks for joining. Thanks for hanging out. This is a track by Zycotic K9, the industrial band from Canada, who emailed me. Thanks for the link. And every link that I have mentioned or discussed tonight can be found below.
Typically engineered and all that crap.
You are listening to Infinite Plane Radio. Stick around for live call-in shows. Stay for the music and recent replays. Join us at infiniteplane.live for 24/7 live chat.